Welcome to this time of worship. My name is Melissa Bailey Kirk, and I serve as the pastor at Gashland United Methodist Church, which is located in the Northland of Kansas City, Missouri. As I share this with you, today is Epiphany Sunday, the weekend when Christians around the world remember and celebrate the revelation of God's self in Jesus Christ. Together, we allow ourselves to pause and imagine the mystery and miracle of the appearance of God, something to which many of us have become so accustomed that we become immune to the transforming work of God's self-revelation. My hope is that these weeks of Advent and Christmas have prepared us for the Epiphany, the manifestation of God. May we not only have eyes to see, but hearts to dream, bodies to move, and spirits to persevere. At the birth of Jesus, divine light filled the skies. Stars and angels shone into the lives of shepherds, animals, new parents, Jewish worshipers at the temple in Jerusalem, a prophetess named Anna, a man named Simeon. With the visitations and the celebrations of those who had been dreaming of the Messiah's appearance for generations, one might think that the light in the sky would begin to fade, having accomplished the mission of leading the Jews to the new king, to Jesus. But no. Listen now for a word from God, Matthew chapter 2. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. King Herod ruled in Jerusalem for about 33 years, we think, and by this time he had proven himself to be a power-hungry and paranoid leader. Though he was king, he wanted more, and if he didn't get what he wanted, whether it be more flamboyant worship or admiration of him or a broader geographic reign, when he didn't get what he wanted, bad things happened. And the wise men who are mentioned here were most likely Zoroastrian priests from Persia, astrologers who knew little or maybe even nothing about Jewish hopes and promises fulfilled. The original Greek used to describe these men is magi, the root of the word magician or sorcerer. If their journey began in their home country of Persia, they traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles to reach Jerusalem, where they met King Herod. Because of his inflated and possibly fractured ego, we can assume that King Herod assumed that these magicians had traveled all the way from Persia to pay him the homage that was his due. Imagine the look on his face when the Magi asked the question, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." Did Herod fly into a rage? Were royal cups and plates thrown up against the wall? Did he order the imprisonment of the Magi? He may have done some of those things, but not because he was angry. Listen further. When Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. Herod and Jerusalem were frightened, but for very different reasons. Herod, frightened at the thought of a usurper out there, a successor born without his knowledge or without the opportunity to intervene in that birth. Jerusalem, terrified at the thought of Herod's fear causing more suffering for them or threatening the good news of Jesus's birth. This frightened Herod gathered his advisors, calling together all of the chief priests and scribes of the people. Herod inquired of them where the Messiah was born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people, Israel.'" Bethlehem was not so far from Jerusalem, about 5.5 miles. I have to wonder how King Herod could have possibly missed the birth of Jesus. Did he not see strange lights in the sky that night? Did his advisors not hear the hubbub around the city and around the temple after Jesus had come for his ritual with his parents? Did narcissism render him blind and deaf to anything that didn't grant him immediate gratification? However, he had missed it, King Herod now knew that something had happened. A baby had been born, and people were calling that baby king, which was unacceptable. Listen. Herod secretly called for the wise men, for the Magi, and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you found him, bring me word, so that I may go and pay him homage." If the Magi were intelligent people, or even the slightest bit perceptive, they had already picked up on King Herod's displeasure and knew that his need to find the child had nothing to do with his desire to pay his respects, and everything to do with his obsession to eliminate every threat to his own position and privilege. I read on. When the Magi had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that had been seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. Now, only 5.5 miles had passed since their encounter with the manipulative madness of King Herod, and the Magi were overwhelmed with joy. Only 5.5 miles. A short distance can make all the difference when one is headed in the right direction and carrying the right intention. On entering the house, the Magi saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their country by another road. The Magi, wise men, magicians, Gentiles, followed God's persistent light in the sky. Overwhelmed with joy and wonder, they fell to their knees in sincere worship. I wonder if their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh were part of a plan, the way that some of us, when we gather in worship in person, we bring our offering envelopes or our dollar bills or our coins. The way some of us have developed the habit now of scheduling automatic payments or withdrawals, part of a plan. Or, in the face of God's light, did the Magi simply throw open their treasure boxes and offer Jesus the best that they had? Today, we're wrapping up our Advent through worship series called Those Who Dream, as we explore the ways that God and God's dreamers persevere. According to the dictionary, to persevere is to continue in a course of action, even in the face of difficulty or with little or no evidence of success. God dreams and God perseveres. In the beginning was chaotic emptiness, and God breathed order and possibility into all of it. Gardens, creatures, galaxies, humans, plants, relationship. And since that beginning, God has persevered, continuing on a divine course of action intended to restore this amazing and fractured universe to wholeness, to bring peace among all and throughout all. God has persevered, even when there's been little or no evidence of success. God went so far as to become human and to light up the skies with stars and angels and glorious. God did not only shine the sky for those who had dreamed of God's peaceable kingdom. God persevered in God's shining, the divine light crossing political and cultural and religious barriers to bring good news to all people everywhere. The Magi dreamed, and the Magi persevered, allowing the light of a star to break through their own learnings, traditions, beliefs, and practices, traveling hundreds of miles just to see. Continuing on their journey even after their encounter with Herod's paranoid instability, moving toward the light in worship and in offering, persistent in their certainty that something amazing was happening. And then following a dream, just as they had followed the star, a dream that warned them to not stop in at Herod's on their way home. They traveled by home. They traveled home by a longer route in order to protect God's good news, God's dream. Jesus dreamed and Jesus persevered. As God enfleshed, Jesus' dream remained steadfastly focused on the healing of a broken world, the presence of peace and good intention among all people and throughout the universe. Born, the perfect epiphany of the Creator, Jesus' entire being was devoted to manifesting the perfect will, the perfect dream of God. With his words and his actions, his parables and his prayers, Jesus persevered, moving forward, speaking divine truth against wave after wave of resistance, hostility, and disbelief. In spite of difficulty and little to no evidence of success, Jesus, the manifestation of God, persevered through it all, even through death, for the sake of God's dream. Friends, Epiphany's call is to receive God's dream, however it manifests itself, as a baby in a feed trough, a star in the sky, angelic visitations. Epiphany's call is to persevere in the work of healing and restoration by the grace of God's epiphanies, the assurances that come to us like a shooting star across the sky, or the projections, the predictions that come to us in the sound of suffering and injustice, or the warnings that come to us like a dream in the night. Franciscan Father Richard Rohr invites us to the transformative power of epiphany. This is how he said it. Religion without epiphanies becomes digging in your heels. Religion with epiphanies becomes living on your heels, ready to go wherever God manifests. The danger for those of us who think we already know everything that's needed to be known about God is that we dig our heels into our long-held convictions or traditions. We dig in our heels so deeply that we miss the lights in the sky or the dreams in the night. We miss the promises, the comforting, the warning, the prodding, not even aware that we have stopped persevering for the sake of God's dream. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. We can lift our heels one at a time out of the safety and comfort of our trenches and live with intention, guided by the light of Christ. On this weekend of stars, we have the opportunity to respond to the call to persevere that rings in our hearts, that shines in the sky, and that speaks into our dreams. The gift of star words on Epiphany is a traditional practice in many churches around the world. When we are able to gather in person, many congregations will have an opportunity on this weekend to select a piece of paper from a basket or maybe off of the altar without looking at it. And on that piece of paper, that's often cut in the shape of a star, on that piece of paper is a word. And that word is the star word. It could be a word like compassion or justice or peace. It's a star word, but people select a star word without looking at it, trusting that God is present in our selection and that the star word that is picked up out of the basket or off of the altar table is a gift, inviting us to a new rhythm of reflection, prayer, and intention for the new year. I have with me a list of 150 different star words. And for those of us who are worshiping together via Facebook or YouTube, I'd love to be able to offer you the gift of a star word. If you would just type a number between 1 and 50, I'm sorry, 1 and 150 in the comments on our Facebook page where this is being posted, I will respond to you with a star word that corresponds to that number, a word for the year. Or you can email me at pastor@gashlandumc.org, and I will reply to your email where you've typed in a number, 1 through 150. I'll respond to your email with a star word for your year. May these star words come to you and be a light in your new year, a beacon of hope and perseverance. May you lift your heels for the sake of God's dream. May you follow stars and dreams as they lead you to the good news. And may you persevere as brave as the Magi and live with life-giving, hope-giving, light-spreading intention.